I would say the biggest thing you can do as a young person or just a new person into this industry is own the fact that you don't have experience, but make up for it in knowledge base. If you become a student of the industry and you do truly know as much as you possibly can, I prided myself on not necessarily being the highest IQ in the room, but the hardest worker and know the most.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder and CEO of Milemarker. And today I am joined by Daniel Spurgeon. Daniel is the managing partner of Commonwealth Financial Services, but not that one, not the one you're thinking of. We're going to tell the story of this Commonwealth Financial Services, and don't call him Daniel Spurgeon because that's only for when he got in a bunch of trouble by his college basketball coach. But today we're going to avoid calling him that. We're going to call him by the right name, and we're going to learn all about his Commonwealth Financial Services. Daniel, thanks for hanging out on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. So before I get to my first opening question, the question everybody asks you, are you the big broker dealer Commonwealth, all of that type of stuff. So let's go ahead and have you tell us your story. Who is this Commonwealth? Tell us about this firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So two of my business partners and a predecessor who's now retired actually left AXA Equitable back in 2003 and went to LPL Financial as three individual silos and created the DBA, Commonwealth Financial Services. Kind of the rationale behind the name was serving the common man. They all are Christians and wanted to make sure that they're trying to make their community a better place. And obviously we do work with higher net worth clients as well. But at the time, we didn't want to deter just your normal average Joe blue collar worker that was looking for help. So the firm was Commonwealth Financial Services, founded in 2003. They actually did look at Raymond James, LPL, and Commonwealth Financial Network at the time and ended up going with LPL. But that name has caused some confusion over the years at times.
That's okay. I'm sure there's no confusion with the clients that you serve, which is the important thing. All right, Daniel, my first question that I love to ask everybody, this isn't going to be any exception, is I have found after all of these conversations that almost everybody has their own unique path to our industry. Some people, it might be a traditional path where they followed in family footsteps. For some people, it's an untraditional path where they were doing something completely different and they ended up in this industry through the side door. But whether their path is traditional or untraditional, everybody has what we call a money moment. It's a moment in your life, you're going along and you decide this is what I want to do with my career and how I'm going to spend my time, my waking hours at work. So for you, what was that money moment that led to you sitting in the chair you're in right now having this conversation?
Yeah, that was kind of a hybrid of those two. So I actually planned on becoming a CPA and was going to go into accounting. And I went to Marietta College in Marietta, Ohio, and double majored in finance and public accounting. And the only reason I picked up the double major in finance was to have enough hours to get my 150 credit hours to sit for the CPA. And I was in my last semester, my senior year, and was having a conversation with my girlfriend, now wife. I hate accounting and I don't want to do this the rest of my life. I love all my finance classes. And I also started seeing, again, the pay scale difference in this space versus the accounting world. And if your name's not on the door at an accounting firm as a partner, it's very difficult. And the hours that they put in, kudos to them. I had interned at a CPA firm for 2 years. They treated me very well. But, it was one of those things where, I just kind of had a light bulb go off. Like I was always very stubborn. I want to do what I set out to do, but realized that I didn't want to do that for 40 more years. So decided to kind of give this world a shot. And here we are.
Did you know someone in this world while you were looking at the CPA stuff that because you said you interned with a large accounting firm and they treated you well. How'd you kind of get into this space?
So luck. I actually I just started looking. I didn't know anything about RIAs, the independent BD space, anything of that nature. This was in 2013, early 2014. So I looked around town and I see Morgan Stanley, Northwestern, Merrill Lynch, and Edward Jones, right? So I started throwing applications out and just trying to see where this could lead. And I actually got a job offer from Edward Jones and Merrill Lynch within the same week. Edward Jones happened to come in 2 days early, and I got to have a job. So I took it, started with Jones. And so that was kind of how I got in, was just effectively submitting an application through their online portal on their corporate website and hoping for the best.
I want to double click on that a little bit because I think those are great places to go start in this business. I think in some ways they get a little bit of shade with all the growth of RIAs and independence and all of that stuff. But I got to imagine for someone coming in, not really knowing the industry very well, that the training at a place like an Edward Jones had to be really, really good for you being able to understand the business and things like that.
Yeah. So ironically enough, let's take a step back. I had just accepted the job offer with Edward Jones. And one of my current business partners I had met through a mutual relationship. I stopped in, I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for advice. Am I making the right move? And he said, yeah, same thing you just said, though. We're a small independent shop. At the time they're with LPL. I've never heard of them. And, hey, go to a wirehouse or go to a Jones. They'll train you on how to sell. They'll get you licensed with your 7 and your 66. But he flat told me, you're too much of a liability for us to hire at this point because there is a very high hurdle of entry and bar is pretty high for success. So, go cut your teeth there for a couple of years and then give me a call. So that was the plan. I had a roommate picked out and deposit down on a apartment in St. Louis and was headed to Edward Jones for their 9-month training program. And this gentleman actually called me back after having conversations with his 2 current business partners at the time and said, hey, we've talked. You seem to show a lot of gumption. And if you'd like, we'll take you on, give you a chance, train you in a controlled environment and allow you to learn through more of a mentorship and apprenticeship style structure as an associate advisor rather than, again, no knock on Jones. They do a pretty stout training program, but, they're going to throw 30 or 35 of you every quarter at the wall and see who sticks. We'll try to make sure that you learn, again, in a controlled environment and within reason ensure your success as long as you're working your tail off. So I gave that a lot of thought and was very hesitant because, again, I didn't know anything about the industry really. And I'm thinking, Ed Jones, I see their commercials on TV. Who the heck is LPL and this tiny little Commonwealth Financial? But I ended up making that decision to jump over with those guys. And 2020 hindsight was the best thing I could have ever done.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you're getting ready to go into a big behemoth, really kind of, probably documented and step-by-step training plan. They've done this for thousands and thousands of people to a couple of guys who are having success who just called you a liability and they're like, all right, we're going to figure out how to do this. How much of that was just trial by fire? How much of that was you just learning how to do this job on the fly while just trying to take care of these guys who took a chance on you?
Yeah. So I have often referred to myself as the lab rat or the hamster because there has been a lot of trial and error is the best way to put it. They've always been very loyal and taking care of me as far as giving me a track to run on. Full transparency, at that time, we're $100 million and there's 7 of us total, counting staff, and there was no training. I mean, dude, I just sat in meetings and listened and tried to learn and be a student of the industry and soak up as much as I possibly could. And again, I know I annoyed the heck out of them with the amount of questions I asked, but it was different from the regimented sales process. And this is the structures and products that we use in the platform at Jones. And it was very much more planning centric, planning focused. And how do you lead someone in a conversation as far as finding out through open-ended questions? How do you talk to people? How do you empathize with people? How do you learn how to help them versus push a product? And I think that was incredibly instrumental in future success.
And so you're the lab rat, you're the guinea pig, you sit in a bunch of meetings, you absorb all of this, and then you kind of start building your own book because, over the course of time, now you end up, you're managing partner, you're doing a bunch, you're moving and shaking over there. So give us, the abridged version of what happens from I'm sitting in a meeting having no idea what's going on to now managing partner. Something must have took along the lines there.
A lot of hard work, a lot of luck, a lot of good timing. I mean, again, I think luck favors the prepared. And I think Todd, one of my business partners, would always say that no honest, intelligent effort goes unrewarded. So I would say it was 2 years in. First year I was so green behind the ears. I, was just truly trying to keep my head above water. I was paid a base salary with a commission payout based on, eat what you kill to a point. So I would say in my second year, I started getting a little bit more confidence and working with some of their smaller C&D clients and being able to talk to folks. We actually had a very, very large, at one point was the largest DuPont plant in the world, about 15, 20 minutes from our office. It was in Washington, West Virginia, right outside of Parkersburg, West Virginia. And they had one of their first of 4 spinoffs where they actually divested a couple of their service lines. So all of those guys had access to move their 401ks because they didn't change their job, but they did change companies. And my dad worked at DuPont for 34 years. So I will always give credit to my business partners, gave me a track to run on and helped train me. And we all stand on someone else's shoulders. There's very few people in this world that have built something completely on their own. So I definitely was able to get my foot in the door at the plant a little bit through some relationships through my dad. And again, what I didn't know, I was more than happy to tell someone I don't know, but there's a lot of experience around me. Let's have one of them sit in the meeting. I used to joke and say, I'm probably your kid's age or your grandkid's age. So yeah, within the first couple of years, I was able to start meeting with clients. And then over, the first 4 years was learning a lot, pretty slow. But I would say, roughly year 4 through now, year 10, I've been able to personally bring in roughly 220 million. And we've grown in the last 7 years from about 125 million to about 800 million as a firm. It's been a lot of organic marketing and a lot of hard work.
Congratulations. That's great. I want to double click on one more thing and then we can move on. But, I heard somebody say one time that, especially in this business, you have 5 years experience when you have 5 years experience, right? Like you can't come in and fake it. You can't come in and know the answers to things. And I love how you said you were not shy to say you don't know. But I think there's a lot of people who could be listening to this. Then there's a lot of people out there who might be in a place where they really want to be a financial advisor, but they are young. And there is that sort of challenge that is hard to get around of you're going to look at somebody who's spent their entire life saving up a bunch of money, squirreling it away, being diligent. And it's really tough for them to look at, a 20-something-year-old across the table and trust that, that person's going to take care of them. So, but it sounds like you were able to put together a plan or something. And some of it did sound like you have partners who had been there and you could rely on that. But what would you say to the person who's like, I really want to be an advisor. I really want to do this. I'm really passionate about this, but it's hard to get people to kind of trust you with their life savings, understandably, because they don't have that 5, 7, 10 years experience yet.
Right. Absolutely. So my biggest driver, I just had an insatiable desire to learn. And I would absolutely, there was times things would come up that I didn't know or I wasn't sure on. I'm just a very direct person, for better or worse at times. So I would often say like, hey, let's address the elephant in the room. I know I'm young. All right. I don't make any excuses for it. And I may not know everything, but what I don't know, I will find the right answer for. And if it's something that I can find, down the hall from one of my partners, I'm more than happy to do. If not, I will go to a resource and get you the answer. I think if you're open and honest with people and vulnerable, which is hard to do, clients, they're good people. They want to help you too. If you're willing to almost ask for help, if you will, and show them that you're just a human being that's trying to make it and you don't know everything, but you do have access to everything if you're willing to look it up, they're willing to give you the time of day. And don't BS them, because I did have people ask me questions that I knew they knew the answer to, and they were wanting to see what I would say. Engineers were specifically good at that. I would say the biggest thing you can do as a young person or just a new person into this industry is own the fact that you don't have experience, but make up for it in knowledge base. If you become a student of the industry and you do truly know as much as you possibly can, I prided myself on not necessarily being the highest IQ in the room, but the hardest worker and know the most. And I would tell people there may be guys in the industry that have more years on me, but they're probably not smarter and they're definitely not going to work harder. So that's, possibly comes across as a little arrogant, but I had to have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder to make it, and putting in the work and making sure you can control the factors that you can control, which is work, effort, work ethic, and knowledge.
I love it. And we were talking about this a little bit off the air before we jumped on, but you were a college basketball player. So how much of what you just laid out came from being an athlete, college? And for those who can't tell, because it's a Zoom call, you're not 7 feet tall, right? So how much of that attitude, that chip on your shoulder, that willingness to just work and grind to make it happen comes from your experience being a college athlete?
A lot. So actually basketball was the first thing, in my opinion, I ever failed at. I played for a year and a half and realized very quickly that I was going to make zero money at basketball. I'll say shout out to Coach Vanderwall and Coach Buhai. Coach Vanderwall still at Marietta. Coach Buhai is now the head coach at Heidelberg, which is another Division III school in Ohio, excuse me. They're great guys. I hated them at times. I mean, they held me accountable and rode me into the ground, and I cussed them so many times under my breath, but they held us to a high standard as players. They pushed us to limits that we necessarily as kids didn't think we could reach or didn't think were fair. So they developed an aspect of toughness that I absolutely attribute back to playing for those guys. And then having to step away because of my immaturity at the time and lack of ability to manage time, as again, grades were starting to slide. Basketball was becoming not a priority because, again, 5'10" guy, probably not going to make money at it. So, I looked at that as I'd failed at the first thing I ever loved, and I never wanted to fail at anything again. So yeah, there was always that when things were hard in the business and you're new and you're not getting clients left and right, the willingness to pick yourself back up and just keep taking, the next step forward is paramount, right? Because it's not for the weak of hearted. But yeah, I think I had a pretty good foundation from those two guys.
That's awesome, man. I love that the value made to yourself of I never want to fail at anything ever again, I think is an interesting, we all have those moments in our life, right? Where you kind of look up and you're like, what's going to happen next? And how am I going to respond to that? And so I think it's cool that those things that we really love when we're younger kind of lead to us having a different level of success when we're older. Those experiences paved the way. That's cool. So let's shift to the business a little bit. I've been, double clicking on some of your background and story, but your firm is one of the top 2 fastest growing firms in West Virginia. You've also got a presence in Ohio, and you guys, I think, bill yourself, according to the research, as Ohio Valley's financial planning firm, right? So you guys are trying to be the firm for the Ohio Valley, and that seems to have led to quite a bit of growth. What would you attribute that to? What's working? What's making it happen besides just your grit and hard work that you've had since you were green behind the ears?
Sure. We have good people, genuinely. We're in Appalachia. We're not in New York City. We're not in Chicago. We're not in Charlotte. So it's a smaller market. There's maybe 100,000 people in the greater Marietta-Parkersburg area. But we've been able to find some pretty technically sound advisors. We have the most CFPs on staff of any firm in our area, and it's not even close. So you do have technically sound advisors that have a good work ethic, and we care. I mean, that sounds cliche, but I've always heard, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you really want to make a difference in your community, and again, we're in a smaller market, smaller communities, there's about an hour and a half to 2 hours between all of our offices, but they are all kind of along the Ohio River between Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. You're 1 to 2 degrees of separation from anybody in either market because of family ties and just close-knit communities. So if you're willing to go the extra step and take care of people, even though it may not immediately make a financial difference for yourself, people remember that and people talk, and word of mouth is huge in our markets and our communities because this is, again, it's a small market and people value kind of old school morals, and loyalty is one of them. So I think being loyal, taking care of people, trying to always do the right thing, and operating with integrity has really led to that success.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And is there, besides being in Appalachia, besides being in that specific market, I know you talked about the work that you did with DuPont in the beginning. Do you have a niche? Like, are you still focused on the DuPonts of the world or spinouts of DuPont? Have you expanded beyond that? Like, what does your firm specialize in?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll come back to kind of my accounting background. And then we have another advisor on our team who's also a CFP, and he's an attorney for 7 years prior to joining the dark side. So we have a unique background, again, for a 20-some person firm, having pretty in-depth tax background and a very in-depth law background. We do a lot of work with small business owners, transition planning, estate planning. We don't actually execute tax preparation or estate preparation in-house, but having that knowledge base and being able to refer that out to qualified, competent referral sources in the accounting world and the legal world is just another way you add value. So small business owners are a huge niche for us. And then we do have a lot, not just DuPont, but there are a lot of chemical plants in our area where have provided fantastic careers for people, places that you can come out with a high school degree and make $150,000 a year with great benefits. And then what comes with that is there's a lot of union labor in our area, plumbers and pipe fitters, electricians, millwrights, same thing, hardworking people that are just looking for help, not a handout, but am I on the right track? I'm working my tail off every day. I specialize in something, and maybe it's not asset management or wealth planning, but if you can, again, show them that you care, build that level of trust. So I would say our biggest niche markets are small business owners, and then again, kind of the blue collar workers in our markets.
I love that. And then it seems like you guys are reaching them through content, kind of like this, like we're talking about right now. But obviously, I'm sure you're getting referrals. I'm sure you're doing that type of thing. But you guys are putting out consistent content through, I love this, the Wealth Wednesday program with Neil on your team, typically serving as the host. How did that come about? What started you guys wanting to go down the content route?
Yeah, so that's definitely Neil's baby. He enjoys it and is good at it. So he helps kind of develop the outlines and the content, and we try to make it as much as possible timely with what's going on in the economy or issues that we're seeing come up, whether it be, again, at like a local employer changes a retirement plan structure, or, if there's a legal change in DC, how may that affect you? It's just something that he enjoys doing. And then for us, we'd never really had, from a marketing perspective, most of our marketing had always been word of mouth and just asking for referrals, which there's nothing wrong with that. And it's been great. But brand awareness, and then more importantly, educating our communities, right? So the hope is that obviously that leads to new business, but if we can educate people as well, that's just another layer of value that we're adding. So we're able to cover a lot of different topics that don't necessarily get talked on or touched on by CNBC and things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then, one thing I found too when we were doing the research on this is, you kind of talked about one of your advantages is how good your people are. And I think that fits with the location of your firm. And along the lines of that, on this Wealth Wednesday program, if you ever bring on a new team member or something, they get a chance to come and introduce themselves on the podcast, which is rare. So what's the story behind that?
Exactly that. Hey, if you're part of the team, we want you to, again, get a face in the community. We work as a team. So one of the structural changes that we obviously made from the day I started to where we are today is rather than having silos and everyone has their own book of business under the Commonwealth name, we're very much a team structure now. So when we do well, we all do well. So it makes sense that there's not competition internally of, that's my client versus your client. It's, hey, is the client served? And it doesn't matter who serves that client as long as they're taken care of and they walk out with value added, or their question answered or their concerns alleviated. That's a platform for us to be able to, anytime we bring on a new team member, a new advisor, for them to be able to introduce themselves and us show them, show their face and their knowledge base to our client base and potential client base as well.
That's awesome, man.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Hey, this is Judd Mackerel. Thanks for listening to this show. I just wanted to ask you one question. What's your technology and data strategy for 2025? If you can't clearly answer that question, I'd love to talk. We are spending some specific time with select firms to really go deep and help you clearly answer that question. We believe that it's one of the things that often holds back firms from really achieving their potential, from really achieving growth, and really getting a lot of the things in the position that they need to be. The things that are holding up the way that you scale, like your workflows, how you manage data around your revenue, how you report all of that to your advisors, and getting clarity in all those things. I'm sure there's a lot of very specific things to your business that are really important as well, and we'd love to talk about that. If this is interesting to you, hit me up with an email. My direct email is judd@milemarker.co, and I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, hear what your strategy is, and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you get more clear on that strategy in 2025. Thanks.
All right, so let's talk a little bit. I mean, you guys are growing fast. You have this niche. You're serving business owners. You're serving folks like that. What I've found when we talk to people who are growing quickly is that they're leveraging technology in a pretty meaningful way to do that. Everybody buys technology in this space, but not everybody is able to adopt it as well or leverage it as well as some other firms. So talk to me a little bit about your technology strategy and how you guys are leveraging that to support your growth.
Yeah, that's huge, especially in our market. Life would be a lot easier if we were 800 million with 800 clients, but that's not the market that we're in. So we do have, a lot of normal people with 200 grand, 300 grand, 600 grand. Sure, we have the $20 million clients, but they're not as prevalent here as they are in major markets. So we've had to utilize technology to make things scalable because we know that we're probably always going to have a slightly higher average client load than a similar sized RIA, say in a larger market. That was actually one of the main reasons for the change to RIA was being able to leverage portfolio management softwares, having everything integrate and communicate. So when the operations team is, something as simple as opening an account, I think at one point in time, they would have to enter the same information 4 times on 4 different platforms, right? Like complete waste of time. So I will give Alyssa Williams and Chanel Jeffrey, our CCO and our COO, Alyssa's Chief Operating Officer, and Chanel's our Chief CEO. This ship would not move forward without them, flat out. And they did a lot of due diligence on how to make systems and processes a lot more efficient through the RIA changeover. And the biggest thing is, again, this world's always changing. So you have to be willing to adapt and technology is an easy way to try to make things more efficient, more scalable. So I would just say, again, we've always had kind of the mindset of not set it and forget it. I've actually been, probably slapped upside the head a couple times of stop picking up every shiny penny. We don't always have to be looking for something new, but that's something that we've kind of had culturally here is we're not really ever satisfied. And if we could try to make something more efficient or improve on something, we will.
That's great. What do you think has been because it sounds like you turn over some shiny pennies and there's a place for that. I think you have to kind of be looking at what's out there as well as the stuff that is adopted and installed. Has there been anything in particular on the technology side that you would say had the greatest impact? Everybody uses portfolio management, everybody uses CRM, all of that stuff. But was there anything for you that you guys were like, this was a meaningful uplift in our business?
Actually having access to, we use Orion as our kind of centrally managed platform, if you will, for trading, portfolio management. Orion's, again, it's probably the most pivotal piece that we use. We use several. That's internal. That's awesome for us to try to make things more efficient. Everything feeds through to Schwab and Fidelity directly. So Orion's probably our biggest internal asset. External asset, I would say eMoney is, again, if we're going to be a planning-centric firm, eMoney is a fantastic, you can make it as detailed as you want, high level as you want. Understanding that platform, that software, and how to get out of it what you're looking for, that's a huge value add for our clients.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. All right, so we can't talk about technology without talking about the future a little bit. So I know the role that you're sitting in, you have to kind of be able to peek around corners a little bit. You have to figure out what's coming, obviously within reason, because especially in today's day and age, stuff is changing so fast that, you feel like what you see coming down the pike, it's already past you by the time it gets here. But take out that crystal ball a little bit and tell me some of the things that you guys are paying attention to as trends or future things that you see coming that you're trying to position Commonwealth for.
In the technology space, if we're focusing on that, I think the obvious one is AI, and what role is that going to play? I guess more of an opinion statement. I don't think it's ever going to, my entire career, we've heard about robo-advisors and low-cost solutions for smaller clients. That aspect of AI, can a computer potentially, from a statistical standpoint, build out a more efficient, from a risk-reward portfolio than a human? Probably. Yeah, I would say arguably yes, than the average advisor. Because again, most advisors are relationship managers. They're not always the most sound and profound minds from a portfolio construction standpoint. So I think there's always that space, but I think clients are always going to want to see people, web call, face-to-face, whatever it may be. They want relationships and they want someone that cares. So I think AI in our world is going to become more, rather than replacing us, or we should look at it as a threat, I think we should look at it more as how do we utilize it to continue to make our businesses more scalable and more efficient, either shorten or mitigate processes and procedures altogether. And again, I think it's going to be, depending on that wonderful C word, compliance, how are we able to utilize that from, whether it be a phone call like this with a client and it's, tracking everything that's being said, spitting out an output from a note perspective to make that process more efficient. We've already looked at that and are actively looking at that. To, again, I'll be very curious to see how the Black Diamonds and the Orions of the world utilize some form of AI to try to make, whether it be account opening at Schwab or RMD distributions, like how much of this can just take human time and error out of it. Yeah. I'll be curious. Again, there are far smarter minds than myself trying to figure that out. So we're just trying to position ourselves in a way that we're willing to jump when we have the opportunity and looking to see how that can make our business better.
I love that. I think that's the right approach to have is, I've talked to some people who they try to act on predictions or, things along those lines to be first. And sometimes it works out well, but a lot of times, it ends up really causing challenges. And the funny thing is, in our space, there's not that big of an advantage to kind of nailing the prediction and being the first person, but being in a posture where you can act and you can be nimble and be able to make changes when they come tends to be the most positive one. Because you don't want to be the last people to adopt it, but sometimes you don't want to be on the bleeding edge.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is good.
Learn from others' mistakes. Don't necessarily recreate the wheel all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about outside of technology? So I think that's a great sort of way that you're looking at what's happening in the future with technology. But what about maybe outside of that, just industry trends as a whole that you're trying to position yourselves for? You said that you guys have grown to roughly around 800 million. I'm sure that you are starting to get into the conversations with everybody from all of the aggregators and all of that type of stuff. You're in that sort of magic Goldilocks land of AUM. But what do you think about the consolidation trends or anything else happening outside of technology in the future of our space?
Yeah. So we have a consultant that we work with as well, a business coach, if you will. And their team is made up of multiple professionals that have been in the RIA landscape far longer than I've been in the business in general. So we do lean on them. And that's something that you're absolutely right. I think I get a PE call or email once a week. And if it's not PE, it's larger RIAs or aggregators coming in to tell us how they can make our lives better by, introducing and improving scalability. And so, I think that we're absolutely paying attention to that world. We are seeing, I have a lot of conversations with people, other advisors in different markets at different size of firms. How did you get there? What was the process like? I'm a big believer in learning from people with experience. So I think there's going to be a space for that, and we're very open to that. We just want to make sure that whatever we're doing is truly going to culturally fit what we've built here and the promises that we have made our employees as far as a future for them. And then obviously there has to be a cultural fit client-wise as well. We're not against it at all. I think we will absolutely at some point in time look at more inorganic growth. We've had a little bit to get to 800, but not much. I would say, maybe 100, 150 of that has been inorganic. The rest of it has been organic. But I think that's absolutely a space that's going to continue to grow. And if you're not willing to at least explore it or see where you fit in, you're putting your head in the sand intentionally. And that's something how you can wake up in 10 years and the industry's passed you by.
Yeah.
Especially with the way valuations are going. I think I listened to Joe Duran at the CityWire conference, and he talked about a lot of advisors are very much under the concept of I'll milk this until I'm in my 70s, and then I'll sell it for 2x and or 3x, and that is not necessarily the case. There's a lot of factors that you end up having to become a business owner versus just a financial advisor if you want to really maximize the value of your practice.
Your comment about Joe Duran is really interesting to me because I think that's a conversation that, maybe it was good to be a first mover on in some ways, but it's changing and it's having in the industry a ton, which is, I think, right or wrong, it doesn't really make a difference. So many people who run practices like this were so focused on their take-home compensation today and trying to maximize that as much as they could, which is great. But I'm starting to see more and more leaders of firms, they're at a really nice comp level for themselves. And you kind of have to start changing the conversation to enterprise value. Mm-hmm. What investments are we making in the firm? What are we doing to increase the enterprise value of the firm? That's a lot of what Joe Duran's talking about and other people. And it's funny because it ties back to some of your stuff on technology as well, which is, I think historically this industry has been very underinvested when it comes to technology. But I think the reason why is because you're effectively asking the partners of a business to take money out of their pocket and their take-home pay to invest in technology. And, it's hard to see the ROI immediately. It's hard to see a lot of those things. So it's kind of happened. Now, more investments in technology and technology infrastructure leads to higher enterprise value. And that's being proven by the people paying higher multiples. Mm-hmm. So the conversation, and I think the paradigm's just shifting there a little bit, which is a really interesting place to be. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at too, is, the trend there is not just that consolidation is going to continue, but you have to start thinking about the enterprise value of the firm and the valuation of the firm more than what is my actual, net take home pay as a partner.
Absolutely. And that's been a growing pain here that we've had to tackle after coming from the world of everyone's silo under the same name. Internally, formal or informal buy-sell agreements to now it's like, okay, we are a real corporation. We have to run this like a real company. We have to think about this from that perspective. I think people's practices have grown unintentionally at times so much. Look what the market's done in the last 15 years. You add that to the fact that, again, PE is always looking for new places to put assets. It's forced our industry to evolve into more of a corporate structure versus the solo or the two-man teams that are making, 800 to $1 million a year, but they're milking everything that the company's worth. So that's definitely been conversations we've had internally and have had to navigate some of those thought process changes, especially depending on the stage of career, right? So it's good stuff. But I think having conversations with other people in the industry, and having a coach has been paramount for us being able to navigate that.
That's awesome. I love that, man. All right. That's a great place to kind of pivot to the final segment of the show, which is what we call the Milemarker Minute, series of lightning round questions, kind of a little bit more lighthearted, to get to know you a little bit better beyond the firm. So you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
Let's go.
All right. If you could travel anywhere in the world that you've never been to before, where would you go?
Australia.
Oh, good answer. Are you a mountains person or a beach person?
Beach. My wife's Jamaican, so I don't have a choice.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Who is your favorite basketball team?
Professionally?
Sure. College, professional?
I would say college. I'm a Mountaineer by heart. I grew up a bandwagon Duke Blue Devils fan, so I'm sure half the people listening to this are going to tell me to kick rocks. But I'd say WVU first, then Duke.
Okay, I love it. What is the best book you've read or listened to in the past 12 months?
Quantitative Value by the guys at Alpha Architect, Wes Gray. Yeah, it's actually a really interesting read. So yeah, Jack Vogel's a really smart guy. We talk to him all the time. I've talked to Wes a couple times, so I really enjoy their stuff. That triggers my inner nerd.
That's awesome. Shout out Wes Gray and Jack Vogel. All right, everybody, that's been another episode of The Connected Advisor. Daniel, thanks so much for joining the show today. For all of you, please make sure you click subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to this. And if you'd be kind enough to leave us a review so more people can find great conversations like this one with Daniel, we'd greatly appreciate it. But until next time, enjoy every mile.